The research ship New Horizon shook violently as it fell through the alien atmosphere. Dr. Lisa Martinez grabbed onto her seat as alarms screamed throughout the bridge. Sparks flew from broken control panels while the crew fought to save their ship. "We're going down," shouted Captain Ryan Cooper from the pilot's seat. "Everyone brace for impact." Lisa closed her eyes and held tight. She thought about her family back on Earth. She thought about all the alien life forms she still wanted to study. The ship hit the ground with a terrible crash that threw her forward into darkness. When Lisa woke up, everything hurt. Her left shoulder burned with pain from a deep cut caused by flying metal debris. Burns covered both her arms where electrical fires had touched her skin. Each breath felt like knives in her chest because 3 of her ribs were broken and had damaged her lung. She looked around the wreckage of her ship. The other crew members were dead. She was alone on an alien planet, badly injured with no way to call for help. Most people would have given up. Lisa Martinez was not most people. She dragged herself out of the twisted metal that used to be her ship. The alien sun felt warm on her face, but the air smelled strange. Purple plants grew everywhere and 2 moons hung in the orange sky. This was definitely not Earth. Lisa found the medical kit and treated her wounds as best she could. She wrapped her shoulder with bandages and put medicine on her burns. The broken ribs would heal on their own if she was careful. She had learned basic field medicine during her military training years ago. For 3 days, Lisa struggled to survive. She found water dripping from strange blue rocks and ate fruits that looked safe. Every movement hurt, but she kept going. She built a small shelter from ship parts and alien branches. At night, she could hear creatures moving in the purple forest, but none came close to her camp. On the 4th day, they found her. Lisa was trying to start a fire when she heard the humming sound. She looked up and saw a silver disc floating above the trees. It made no noise except for a soft hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The disc lowered slowly and landed near her shelter. 3 beings stepped out of the craft. Lisa had never seen anything like them. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow in the sunlight. Their heads were larger than human heads, with big dark eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They had long, delicate fingers and moved with careful, graceful steps. Lisa tried to stand up to greet them, but the pain in her ribs made her fall back down. One of the beings made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The other 2 responded with similar musical tones. They were talking to each other in their own language. The first being approached Lisa slowly. It held up one hand to show it meant no harm. In its other hand, it carried a device that looked like a crystal wand. When it pointed the device at Lisa, blue light scanned her from head to toe. The being's large eyes grew even wider. It made urgent chiming sounds to its companions. All 3 beings began talking rapidly in their musical language. They seemed very surprised about something. One of the beings touched a panel on its wrist, and suddenly Lisa could understand their words. The device was translating their language into English. "Impossible," said the first being in a voice like singing bells. "The creature should be dead. Look at these injuries. Look at this damage to its body." "The scans show massive trauma," replied another being. "Blood loss, organ damage, bone fractures. How is it still moving?" "And conscious," added the third being. "It was trying to make fire. It built shelter. This makes no sense according to our medical knowledge." Lisa tried to speak, but her voice came out as a weak whisper. I'm human. From Earth. My ship crashed." The beings looked at each other with what Lisa thought might be amazement. The first being knelt down beside her with movements so careful they seemed like a dance. "Human," it repeated slowly. "We are Veltar. I am Zixthu, a medical researcher. You are badly injured. You should not be alive with these wounds." "I'm tougher than I look," Lisa managed to say with a small smile. Zixthu made more chiming sounds. "We must take you to our medical facility. We need to understand how you survive with such damage to your body." 2 more Veltar appeared from their ship, carrying a floating stretcher that glowed with soft light. They lifted Lisa onto it with extreme care, as if she might break from the slightest touch. The stretcher felt warm and comfortable, and some of her pain began to fade. As they carried her into their ship, Lisa noticed how the Veltar moved. Every step was slow and careful. They seemed afraid of getting hurt themselves. Their ship was smooth and curved inside with no sharp edges anywhere. "Your people," Zixthu said as the ship lifted off. "Are they all like you? Do they all survive such terrible injuries?" Lisa thought about her childhood friends who had survived broken bones, car accidents, and serious illnesses. She thought about her grandfather who had lived through a war and her grandmother who had beaten cancer twice. "We're survivors," she said. "That's what humans do. We don't give up easily." The Veltar ship flew silently over the alien landscape toward a city of white spires and floating buildings. Lisa watched through a window as they passed over forests of purple trees and lakes of golden water. It was beautiful, but all she could think about was getting home. She did not know that her arrival would change everything the Veltar thought they knew about life in the universe. She did not know that her scars would become proof of something the aliens had never seen before. She did not know that she was about to become the most important discovery in Veltar history. All Lisa knew was that she was alive when she should have been dead. For a human, that was just another day of being human. The Veltar medical facility looked like something from a dream. White walls curved smoothly into the ceiling, and soft blue light came from everywhere at once. Lisa lay on a bed that felt like floating on a cloud while machines hummed quietly around her. Zixthu stood beside her bed with 5 other Veltar medical experts. They all wore long robes that shimmered like water, and their large, dark eyes reflected the blue light as they studied display screens showing Lisa's body. "Run the scan again," Zixthu said to another doctor named Kilara. "These readings cannot be correct." Kilara touched a crystal panel and beams of light passed over Lisa's body once more. The screens filled with images and numbers that made the Veltar doctors make worried chiming sounds. "The scans are accurate," Kilara reported. "Severe tissue damage in the shoulder region. Burns covering 18% of the body surface. 3 fractured ribs with lung puncture. Estimated survival probability based on our medical database is 3%. Yet she remains conscious and responsive," said another doctor named Velness. "She even attempted to refuse pain medication. This defies all known biological laws." Lisa turned her head to look at the doctors. Even that small movement made them step back as if they expected her to collapse. "I feel much better now, thank you. When can I contact my people?" The doctors looked at each other with expressions Lisa was learning meant confusion and worry among the Veltar. "Contact your people?" Zixthu asked gently. "You were near death when we found you. You still have serious injuries. How are you planning future activities?" "Because I'm getting better," Lisa said simply. "My shoulder doesn't hurt as much. The burns are healing. Broken ribs take about 6 weeks to heal completely, but I should be walking around normally in a few days." The room went completely silent. Even the humming machine seemed to pause. Finally, Kilara spoke in a whisper. "6 weeks? You expect to recover from fatal injuries in 6 weeks?" Lisa sat up carefully, ignoring the sharp looks from all the doctors. "These aren't fatal injuries. They hurt, but they're not going to kill me. I've had worse." "You have had worse than this?" Velness asked in amazement. "Impossible. No living creature could survive worse than this." Lisa pulled back the soft hospital gown they had given her. The Veltar doctors moved closer, their eyes growing even wider as they saw her skin. Her body was covered in scars. A long white line ran down her right arm from when she had fallen through a glass door as a child. Burn marks on her hand showed where she had grabbed a hot pan when she was learning to cook. A jagged scar on her leg came from a rock climbing accident in college. Small round marks on her arm were from vaccinations. Dozens of tiny scars covered her hands and arms from cuts, scrapes, and minor injuries collected over 32 years of living. "Each of these marks," Zixthu said slowly, "represents an injury that would have killed one of us." "Really?" Lisa looked down at her scars with new interest. "I never thought about it that way. These are just normal wear and tear for a human." Kilara activated a device that projected a 3-dimensional image of Lisa's body above the bed. The scars showed up as bright lines against her skin. The doctors counted more than 50 visible scars, plus evidence of healed broken bones, muscle tears, and other injuries. "This one," Velness pointed to the long surgical scar on Lisa's abdomen. "What caused this damage?" "Appendectomy when I was 16, Lisa explained. "My appendix was about to burst, so they cut it out." "Pretty routine surgery. They cut into your body?" Kilara asked in horror. "On purpose? While you were alive?" "Well, yes. How else would they fix internal problems?" Lisa was beginning to understand that humans and Veltar were very different when it came to medicine. Zixthu made rapid notes on a crystal tablet. "Describe the recovery process from this surgery." "I was in the hospital for 2 days, then home for a week. Back to school in 10 days. The scar was tender for a month or so, But no big deal. The Veltar doctors began talking among themselves in their musical language, speaking too fast for the translator to keep up. Lisa caught words like impossible, or miraculous, and unprecedented. Dr. Martinez, Zixthu said formally, would you be willing to share more information about your species? We have never encountered beings capable of such recovery from trauma. Lisa thought about her old research partner Kevin Roberts, who had been a medic in the army before becoming a scientist. He had told her stories about soldiers who kept fighting with injuries that should have stopped them. She remembered her grandmother who had survived 2 heart attacks and cancer, living to be 94 years old. Humans are tough, she said. We evolved on a dangerous planet. We had to be able to survive injuries and keep going, or we would have died out millions of years ago. Evolution, Velnus repeated thoughtfully. Your species developed these abilities naturally. Our planet has predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme weather, poisonous plants, and dangerous terrain, Lisa explained. Humans who couldn't heal from injuries didn't live long enough to have children. So over millions of years we got better and better at surviving damage to our bodies. Kylara was studying the scans with intense focus. Your muscle density is remarkable. Your bone structure is designed to withstand impact. Your skin can heal from burns that would be fatal to us. And your circulatory system has multiple backup pathways. Plus we have redundant organs, Lisa added. 2 kidneys, 2 lungs, 2 eyes, 2 ears. We can lose one of most things and still function normally. 2 kidneys? Zixthu asked faintly. Why would you need 2 kidneys? In case one gets damaged or diseased. My uncle donated one of his kidneys to my aunt when hers failed. Now they both live normal lives with 1 kidney each. The room fell silent again. Lisa was beginning to realize that the Veltar were much more fragile than humans. Their pale blue skin looked delicate, and they moved as if they were afraid of getting hurt. Their homeworld must be a much safer place than Earth. Dr. Martinez, Zixthu said quietly, I believe you and your species may be the most remarkable discovery in our civilization's history. Would you help us understand how humans achieve such incredible resilience? Lisa smiled, even though it made her split lip sting a little. I'd be happy to help. But first, can you help me contact my people? They're probably worried about me. What Lisa didn't know was that news of the indestructible human was already spreading through Veltar society. Some saw her as a medical miracle that could teach them new ways to heal. Others saw her as something much more dangerous. The examination was just the beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Lisa's arrival at the Veltar medical facility. Her shoulder wound had closed completely, leaving only a pink line that would fade to white in a few months. The burns on her arms were healing well, with new skin growing to replace the damaged areas. Her broken ribs still ached, but she could move around without much pain. The Veltar doctors watched her recovery with amazement that bordered on worship. Every day brought new questions about human biology and new tests that Lisa willingly participated in. She had become their most important research subject, but she was also becoming their teacher. Tell us again about persistence hunting, Zixthu requested as he recorded Lisa's daily medical readings. Her blood pressure, heart rate, and brain activity were all normal despite injuries that would have killed a Veltar weeks ago. Lisa sat cross-legged on her hospital bed, a position that made the Veltar nervous because it looked uncomfortable to them. Humans used to hunt large animals by chasing them until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. We couldn't run as fast as deer or antelope, but we could run longer. For how long? Asked Dr. Kylara, who had become fascinated with human endurance capabilities. Some humans can run for hours without stopping. Marathon runners cover 26 miles in just over 2 hours. Ultra-marathon runners can go for days. Lisa stretched her arms above her head, enjoying the feeling of her muscles working properly again. The Veltar doctors exchanged their musical conversation sounds. For them, running for more than a few minutes would cause dangerous stress to their delicate circulatory systems. But that's just one example, Lisa continued. Let me tell you about my friend Amy Johnson. She was mountain climbing in Colorado when a boulder shifted and trapped her leg. She was stuck alone for 5 days with no food or water in freezing temperatures. She died from exposure, Velnus concluded sadly. No, she lived. She used her pocket knife to cut through the trapped muscle and bone in her leg. Then she crawled and walked 15 miles to reach help. She lost her leg below the knee, but she survived. She even went back to mountain climbing with a prosthetic leg. The room went completely silent. Lisa had learned that this meant the Veltar were processing information that challenged everything they thought they knew about biology. She deliberately damaged her own body to escape? Zixthu asked carefully. Sometimes you have to hurt yourself a little to survive something worse, Lisa explained. Amy knew that losing her leg was better than dying on that mountain. Humans make that kind of choice all the time. Lisa stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the Veltar city. The white spires and floating buildings were beautiful, but she missed the messy, chaotic architecture of human cities. There was also Jake Morrison, a pilot whose plane crashed in the Sahara Desert. He had a broken arm, burns on his face, and internal injuries. The crash site was 200 miles from the nearest settlement. 200 miles, Kilara whispered. Through desert? He walked for 12 days, drinking his own urine when he ran out of water. He ate insects and cactus plants. When rescue teams found him, he had lost 40 pounds and was hallucinating from dehydration, but he was still walking. Lisa turned back to face the doctors, and there was Maria Santos, a soldier who took a bullet near her spine during combat. The medic said she might never walk again. She not only kept fighting that day, she carried 2 wounded soldiers to safety. She recovered full use of her legs within a year. These stories, Zixthu said slowly, are they typical of your species? Every human has stories like these. Maybe not as dramatic, but everyone has survived something that could have killed them. Car accidents, diseases, falls, burns, cuts, infections, broken bones. We get hurt, we heal, and we keep going. Lisa sat back down on her bed and rolled up her sleeve to show a small round scar on her upper arm. This is from a vaccination I got as a baby. They injected weakened disease germs into my body so my immune system would learn to fight them. They gave you diseases on purpose? Velnus asked in horror. Tiny amounts, just enough to teach my body how to defend itself. Now I'm immune to dozens of deadly diseases. All human children get these vaccinations. The Veltar doctors looked at each other with expressions Lisa had learned meant they were reaching the limits of their ability to understand something. Dr. Martinez, Zixthu said formally, we need to share something with you. Our species evolved on a world with no large predators, few diseases, and very stable weather. We developed advanced technology because we had time to think and build, but we never developed physical resilience like humans. A simple fall can break our bones, Kilara added. A small cut can lead to fatal infection. We live longer than humans, but only because we avoid all risks. We've never seen anything like human durability, Velnus continued. Your species represents a completely new type of life form to us. Lisa was beginning to understand something important. You're afraid of getting hurt. Yes, Zixthu admitted. Pain and injury are our greatest fears. We've built our entire civilization around avoiding physical harm. But you can't really live if you're always afraid of getting hurt, Lisa said gently. Sometimes you have to take risks to do important things. Sometimes getting hurt is the price of helping other people or achieving something worthwhile. She thought about Kevin Roberts, her old research partner. He had been a combat medic before becoming a scientist, running into dangerous situations to save wounded soldiers. He had been injured many times, but he said the scars were worth it because of the lives he had saved. Human parents let their children play rough games and climb trees, even though they might get hurt, Lisa continued. We know that children who never get minor injuries don't learn how to handle pain or develop strong bodies. You deliberately allow your young to be injured? Kilara asked in amazement. Small injuries, yes. Scraped knees, bumps, bruises. It teaches them that pain isn't the end of the world. It makes them braver and stronger. Lisa walked over to a wall display showing images of the Veltar homeworld. Everything looked perfectly safe and controlled. No rough terrain, no dangerous weather, no wild animals. Your world is beautiful, she said, but I think humans and Veltar developed differently because our worlds were different. Earth made us tough because it had to. Your world let you become gentle and wise because it could. Perhaps, Zixthu said thoughtfully. Both approaches have value. Maybe that's why we met. Lisa suggested. Humans can teach you about surviving physical challenges. You can teach us about avoiding unnecessary conflicts and building peaceful societies. What Lisa didn't know was that not all Veltar were interested in learning about human resilience for peaceful purposes. In another part of the city, military strategists were studying her medical reports and seeing something very different from what the doctors saw. They saw the perfect weapon, a creature that refused to die. and they wanted to test just how far human durability could be pushed. 6 weeks after her rescue, Lisa was almost completely healed. Her shoulder moved freely. The burns had left only faint marks, and her ribs no longer ached when she breathed deeply. She had been moved from the medical facility to a comfortable apartment in the Veltar Research Complex, where she continued to work with the doctors and scientists. What Lisa didn't know was that copies of all her medical data had been sent to another group of Veltar with very different interests. War. Strategist Kolvan stood in a secure military facility reviewing holographic displays of Lisa's recovery progress. Unlike the peaceful medical researchers, Colvin and his team saw Lisa's abilities through the lens of combat applications. "Look at these numbers," Colvin said to his assistant, tactical analyst Morvan. "This creature can function with damaged organs, continue fighting with broken bones, and heal from injuries that would kill entire squadrons of our warriors. The implications are significant," Morvan agreed. "If humans have these capabilities naturally, they could be ideal soldiers for extreme missions. Or," Colvin said with a sound like wind chimes in a storm, "they could represent a threat to our security if they ever become hostile. We need to understand their true limits." Meanwhile, Lisa was having lunch with Dr. Zixthu in the research facility cafeteria. The Veltar food was nutritious but bland, designed for their delicate digestive systems. Lisa missed the spicy, varied flavors of human cuisine. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding risk and growth," Zixthu said, as he carefully sipped a pale blue liquid that tasted like water with vitamins. "Perhaps some controlled exposure to minor challenges could help my people develop greater resilience. Start small," Lisa advised, biting into something that looked like a purple apple but tasted like unsalted crackers. "Maybe encourage your children to play more physically active games. Let them experience minor bumps and scrapes in safe environments." Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement from the facility's communication system. "Dr. Martinez, please report to Environmental Testing Laboratory 7 for routine atmospheric compatibility assessments." Lisa shrugged and finished her meal. "More tests, I guess. Your people are really thorough." But when Lisa arrived at Laboratory 7, something felt wrong. The room was much larger than the other testing facilities, with thick walls and observation windows that looked designed to contain dangerous experiments. 2 Veltar technicians she had never seen before directed her to put on a special environmental suit. "What exactly are we testing today?" Lisa asked as they sealed her into the suit. "Standard atmospheric tolerance evaluation," one technician replied without looking at her directly. "Please enter the testing chamber." The chamber was a white cube about 20 feet on each side. As soon as Lisa stepped inside, the door sealed shut with a hiss. Through the observation window, she could see the technicians working at control panels. The air in the chamber began to change. Lisa's suit sensors showed that oxygen levels were dropping while nitrogen levels increased. This was supposed to simulate the atmosphere of a hostile alien world, but the changes were much more extreme than any routine test would require. Lisa's training kicked in. She had learned emergency protocols during her years as a research scientist, including how to recognize when equipment was malfunctioning or when safety procedures were being ignored. This was no routine test. "Hey," she called out, tapping on the observation window. "These atmospheric changes are outside safe parameters. Please return to normal levels." The technicians ignored her. The oxygen content continued to drop to levels that would be fatal to most species within minutes. But Lisa's enhanced human hemoglobin and efficient circulation allowed her to remain conscious and alert, even as the air became thin enough to cause altitude sickness. After 30 minutes of low oxygen, the atmosphere was suddenly replaced with a heavy, toxic mix that would have killed a Veltar instantly. Lisa's suit protected her, but she could see that this was a test of survival capabilities, not atmospheric compatibility. The testing continued for hours. Extreme temperatures that swung from below freezing to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Atmospheric pressure changes that simulated being underwater or at high altitude. Radiation levels that should have been immediately lethal. Each time Lisa survived, her body adapted, her suit compensated, and her human resilience carried her through conditions that would have destroyed any other known life form. When the testing finally ended, Lisa was exhausted, but alive. As she was escorted back to her apartment, she began to notice other changes in her routine. Her meals now contained trace amounts of substances that made her slightly nauseous. Her sleeping quarters were subjected to random temperature fluctuations and noise disturbances that interrupted her rest. Someone was testing her limits systematically, and it wasn't the medical researchers. Lisa started paying closer attention to her surroundings. She noticed security cameras in places where they hadn't been before. Some of the facility staff avoided making eye contact with her, and her requests to contact Earth or arrange transportation home were met with delays and excuses. She remembered her survival training from years ago, when she had worked with Tom Anderson, a park ranger who taught wilderness survival skills. Tom had always said that the most dangerous situations were the ones that looked safe on the surface. "Trust your instincts, Lisa," Tom had told her during a training exercise in the Montana wilderness. "If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. Don't ignore that feeling just because people in authority tell you everything is fine." That evening, Lisa asked Dr. Zixthu about the unusual testing she had undergone. "Environmental Testing Laboratory 7? Zixthu looked confused. "We don't have a Laboratory 7 in our research facility. Our environmental labs only go up to Laboratory 4. Lisa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Then where was I tested today?" "I don't know," Zixthu admitted. "But I will investigate immediately." The next morning, Zixthu arrived at Lisa's apartment with disturbing news. "You were taken to a military research facility. The tests you underwent were designed to determine the absolute limits of human survival capabilities." "Without my consent," Lisa said angrily, "and without telling me the real purpose. There are Veltar who see humans as potential weapons rather than potential friends," Zixthu explained sadly. "They want to understand if humans can be used for military purposes in environments where our warriors cannot survive." Lisa stood up and walked to her apartment window. Outside, she could see Veltar citizens going about their daily lives in their safe, controlled city. But now she knew that some of them saw her not as a person, but as a tool. "They're going to keep testing me, aren't they?" she asked. "I'm afraid so," Zixthu replied. "And I fear the tests will become more extreme." That night, Lisa made a decision. She had survived a ship crash, alien diseases, environmental extremes, and systematic testing designed to find her breaking point. But she would not survive indefinitely as a laboratory specimen. It was time to show the Veltar that humans were not just tough to kill. They were also very difficult to keep prisoner. Lisa waited until the deepest part of the Veltar night cycle before making her move. She had spent weeks observing the facilities, routines, and had learned that security was minimal during the rest period because the Veltar couldn't imagine anyone being reckless enough to move around in darkness using techniques Tom Anderson had taught her during wilderness survival training. Lisa picked the lock on her apartment door with a hairpin. The Veltar security systems were advanced but designed for their own psychology. They never considered that someone might deliberately choose to face danger. She made her way through the darkened corridors toward the facility's outer walls. Her human eyes adapted to the low light much better than Veltar eyes would have, giving her an advantage in navigation. When she reached the exterior wall, she used her jacket to muffle the sound of breaking a window, then squeezed through the opening despite the cuts it gave her arms. The Veltar city was beautiful at night, with softly glowing spires and floating platforms connected by bridges of light. But Lisa headed away from the city toward the wilderness beyond, where purple forests offered concealment from the search parties that would inevitably follow. By morning, alarms were sounding throughout the research facility. War strategist Kolvan arrived within minutes, his pale blue skin darker with what Lisa had learned was the Veltar equivalent of anger. "How did the human escape?" he demanded from the security chief. "She somehow opened a secured door and broke through a reinforced window," the security chief replied nervously. "We've never had a test subject attempt escape before." "Find her," Kolvan ordered. "Use aerial search units and ground tracking teams. She cannot have gone far on foot." But Lisa had gone much farther than the Veltar expected. Using skills learned from years of wilderness research expeditions, she had covered 15 miles before dawn, moving through terrain that would have been impossible for the delicate Veltar to navigate safely. She found shelter in a cave system within the Purple Mountains, where she used her knowledge of basic geology to locate underground water sources. The alien plants were different from Earth vegetation, but her research background helped her identify which ones were likely to be edible and which ones to avoid. For 3 days, Lisa evaded capture. The Veltar search teams flew overhead in their silent aircraft, but they couldn't track someone who understood how to move without leaving obvious signs. Lisa had learned tracking and counter-tracking from Tom Anderson, who had spent years finding lost hikers in some of Earth's most challenging wilderness areas. Most people who get lost make the same mistakes, Tom had told her during a training exercise in the Rocky Mountains. They follow the easiest path. They stay near water sources and they don't think about covering their tracks. If you want to avoid being found, do the opposite of what people expect. Lisa climbed steep rocky slopes that would be dangerous for the Veltar, avoided obvious hiding places, and used streams to mask her trail. She even built false campsites to mislead the search teams, then slept in uncomfortable locations that no reasonable person would choose. On the fourth day, she made a mistake that almost cost her life. While scouting a path through a narrow canyon, Lisa heard a sound like breaking glass from below. A young Veltar scout had fallen from his aerial platform into the rushing river that ran through the canyon bottom. The scout was thrashing in the water, clearly unable to swim, and was being carried toward a series of dangerous rapids. Lisa didn't hesitate. Despite her exhaustion, despite the fact that saving the scout would reveal her location to the search teams, despite the risk to her own life, she scrambled down the rocky cliff face and dove into the alien river. The water was cold and moved faster than she had expected. Lisa had been a strong swimmer in college, but this was more like whitewater rescue than pool swimming. She fought the current while swimming toward the drowning scout, getting battered against rocks and submerged logs as the river carried them both downstream. She reached the young Veltar just as they were approaching the worst of the rapids. Grabbing him with one arm while using the other to swim, Lisa angled toward the riverbank and used every bit of her remaining strength to pull them both to safety. They collapsed on the rocky shore, both gasping for breath. The scout was injured but alive, and Lisa was bleeding from numerous cuts and scrapes. Within minutes, Veltar rescue aircraft were landing nearby, having been alerted by the scout's emergency beacon. As medical teams rushed to help the injured scout, Lisa found herself surrounded by Veltar soldiers. She was too exhausted to run, and there was nowhere to go anyway. She had been captured, but at least the young scout would live. War strategist Kolvan arrived personally to oversee her recapture. He looked down at Lisa as she sat on the riverbank, wet, injured, and clearly at the end of her endurance. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why did you risk your life to save one of us when you were so close to escape?" Lisa looked up at him, water dripping from her hair. "Because he needed help. That's what people do for each other. Even enemies." Kolvan pressed. "He wasn't my enemy. He was just a kid who fell in a river." The young scout, whose name was Pixtu, was sitting nearby receiving medical treatment. Despite his injuries, he insisted on speaking to Lisa before the soldiers took her away. "You saved my life," he said in a voice like small bells. "I would have drowned without your help." "Anyone would have done the same thing," Lisa replied. "No," Pixtu said firmly. "No one else could have done what you did. You survived in the wilderness for days. You climbed down an impossible cliff. You swam in waters that would have killed me in seconds. And you risked everything to save someone you had never met." Dr. Zixthu arrived, just as the soldiers were preparing to transport Lisa back to the facility. He had been searching for her with the medical teams, hoping to find her before the military did. "Wait," he called out to Kolvan. "Before you take her back for more testing, listen to what happened here." Zixthu gestured toward the river, the cliff, and the injured scout. "She demonstrated abilities that surpass anything we documented in the laboratory. But more importantly, she demonstrated something we never tested for, which is," Kolvan asked impatiently, "moral courage. She chose to help another being at great personal cost. She chose compassion over self-preservation." Zixthu knelt beside Lisa, his large dark eyes reflecting genuine concern. "Dr. Martinez, why did you risk recapture to save Pixtu?" Lisa was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that seemed obvious to her. "Where I come from, we have a saying, we leave no one behind. It doesn't matter if they're strangers or friends, human or alien. If someone needs help and you can provide it, you help. Even when helping them hurts you?" Pixtu asked. "Especially then," Lisa said. "That's when helping means the most." The group of Veltar stood in silence, processing what they had witnessed. Finally, Dr. Zixthu stood and faced war strategist Kolvan directly. "This is what we've been trying to understand about humans," he said. "Their resilience isn't just physical. It's spiritual and moral as well. They don't just refuse to die. They refuse to let others die when they can prevent it. Colvin looked from Lisa to the rescued scout to the dangerous river where the rescue had taken place. You're saying that human durability is connected to human compassion? I'm saying that humans are remarkable not because they survive, but because of what they choose to do with their survival, Zixthu replied. They use their strength to protect others, not just themselves. Lisa struggled to her feet, still dripping and exhausted but determined to speak. If you want to understand humans, you need to understand that we're not just tough individuals. We're tough because we work together. We survive because we help each other survive, she gestured toward Pixtu. This young scout is alive because humans believe in helping people, even when it's dangerous or inconvenient. That's not a weakness you can exploit in weapons. That's a strength you can learn from in allies. 2 days later, Lisa stood in the main council chamber of the Veltar government. Her injuries had been treated and she wore clean clothes provided by Dr. Zixthu. Representatives from across Veltar society had gathered to hear her speak about human civilization and to make a decision about first contact with Earth. Humans aren't perfect, Lisa told the assembled council. We make mistakes, we fight among ourselves sometimes, and we can be stubborn and difficult. But when things get really bad, when people are in serious trouble, humans will risk everything to help each other. She showed them photographs from her personal device. Images of human rescue workers saving people from natural disasters, doctors treating patients in dangerous conditions, and ordinary people helping strangers in emergencies. These scars you've been studying, Lisa said, rolling up her sleeves to show the marks on her arms. They're not just proof that humans are hard to kill. They're proof that humans think some things are worth getting hurt for. The council voted unanimously to establish peaceful contact with Earth and to release Lisa with full honors. War strategist Kolvan, who had initially seen her as a potential weapon, became one of the strongest advocates for human Veltar cooperation. As Lisa waited for the ship that would take her home, she sat with Dr. Zixthu in the research facility garden, watching the 2 alien moons rise over them